because more and more people are waking up and they're not just blindly believing things that come from Harvard or that are published in Lancet. The left side of this graph is made up wishful thinking on the part of people who love plant-based diets.
Hey, this is Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan. So a lot of you guys have already probably seen this study published in Lancet. They followed over 15,000 people for 25 years and concluded that those on a low-carb diet were at highest risk for all-cause mortality. So predictably, followers of keto and low-carb diets weren't too excited when they heard about this study, and there's been many online trying to debunk this, and I'm not even going to get into any of these bloggers' less than great attempts. I'm going to go straight to a ketogenic medical doctor who thinks this study is just completely biased and has his own brilliant debunking.
The study design, the ARIC study initially was designed by a group of people who believe that total cholesterol is bad and that saturated fat is bad. And so you've got the researcher bias from the very beginning of this research study.
So this is Dr. KenDBerry, by the way, and I think Dr. Berry is projecting a bit much here, because as you'll see, if anyone has bias, it's certainly him. And furthermore, he doesn't even really understand the details of the study all that well.
They break up the three, they arbitrarily break up the study participants into three different groups: low carb, moderate carb, and high carb.
Actually, Dr. Berry, there were 5 groups, not 3. And it might seem like a minor point, but if you can't even get these basic facts right, it makes me wonder how well you even read this study.
Well, how do you define certain words? And here's why that would have been important for this. They considered anyone who was eating 39% of their energy from carbohydrates to be low carb. Now, anyone in the ketogenic or the low carb healthy fat community knows that 39% is not even close to low carb.
Well, Dr. Berry got several facts wrong here. Let me start with the most minor one. He said 39%. It's actually 37%. But the bigger fact that he missed here completely is that they did not define low carb people, this low carb group, by those who ate 37% of their calories from carbs. This was a median number for all 3,086 people in this group, the number right in the middle. So some people ate significantly fewer percent of their calories from carbs than this median number implies. Thirdly, you criticize this low carb group for not being low carb enough for your ketogenic diet standards, but nowhere in this research paper did they even mention the word keto or ketogenic. They were just measuring different carbohydrate intakes amongst the people they researched.
Another thing is a huge problem with this ongoing study is that it is a questionnaire-driven, prospective, observational study. And now this is probably the weakest of all study designs.
Yeah, in addition to Dr. Berry, I saw many other bloggers, low carbers online criticizing this study that it wasn't a clinical trial, it was just an observational study. Well, the researchers of this very study address this point. They know they couldn't do a clinical trial because they're trying to measure all-cause mortality. You just can't run a trial and wait for how many years for people to die. It just doesn't work like that. So criticizing the study for not being a clinical trial is absolutely absurd.
And so you can imagine if you were handed a questionnaire and it had questions like, how many cups of ribs have you eaten in the last 3 years?
Well, what he's asking you to imagine there is not the reality of how the questionnaire worked. It was a questionnaire that had you estimate the frequency of how often you ate food, like once a day, once a month. Furthermore, there are actually photographs of food so you could gauge how much you were eating. So it's not as random and make-believe as Dr. Berry's making it sound.
This questionnaire was designed by a fellow by the name of Dr. Willett. And if you're an influencer in the ketogenic way of eating, you've heard Dr. Willett's name before. He was good friends with a guy named Ancel Keys.
So Ancel Keys is very disliked amongst low carbers because he's one of the early pioneers of the hypothesis that saturated fat causes heart disease, which goes against pretty much everything low carbers believe in. But anyway, back to here, Dr. Willett, who wrote the questionnaire for this study, was supposedly friends with Ancel Keys, according to Dr. Berry's word here. I'll take him at his word here, but so what? Just because you're friends with someone doesn't mean you have the same beliefs and biases as them. He's using the guilt by association fallacy. This is completely absurd. If he's trying to debunk this study, You should stay away from obvious logical fallacies.
Let's talk about Dr. Willett for a second. Was good buddies with Dr. Keyes. He loves a plant-based diet.
Wow, he makes that sound like such a horrible thing, like I'm a bad person.
The study design, the ARIC study initially was designed by a group of people who believe that total cholesterol is bad and that saturated fat is bad. And so you've got the researcher bias.
So in addition to the guilt by association fallacy, Dr. Berry is now going after Dr. Willett for being a promoter of plant-based diets and a promoter of a don't eat a lot of cholesterol school of thought. Let's see if this is really true. So if you just take a look at what Dr. Willett says about dietary cholesterol, he says it doesn't really raise your blood cholesterol all that much. And he says eating eggs is fine as far as heart health. It's not going to give you a heart attack, according to Dr. Willett. So much for being plant-based. And furthermore, here he is saying eating fish and poultry are healthy. So Dr. Willett is not afraid of cholesterol, and he's promoting that people eat all sorts of animal bits for health. Which brings us to Dr. Berry's second fallacy, the straw man argument, intentionally misrepresenting Dr. Willett's position in order to make it easier to attack him, to discredit him.
He's been the chair of the Department of Nutrition at Harvard. The food frequency questionnaire was designed by Dr. Willett. Dr. Willett. I wonder if he gets a little hit of money every time they use his questionnaire. I'm not sure about that. Somebody should find out and let me know.
Which brings us to his third fallacy. This is a classic ad hominem attack. This whole argument that he's putting forth against Dr. Willett is an ad hominem attack, which means you're attacking the person's character, the person's attributes, not their logic, not their reasoning, not their words. I mean, how many fallacies is Dr. Berry going to break out here?
It's not going to change until the old guys who were buddies with Dr. Ansel Keys either retire or die. Dr. Willett's 73 years old, so I think there's hope for our nutritional science in the future.
Wait, so you wish for Dr. Willett to either retire or die? It's all the same dude as long as he's gone. I mean, this is one of the most unprofessional things I've ever heard a medical doctor, a licensed medical doctor say on YouTube.
So when they started to do the second questionnaire, they excluded everyone from the study who had developed diabetes, coronary heart disease, or who had had a stroke.
Really? These people got excluded?
Because those are the people that were probably eating the highest carbohydrates, because chronically high glucose and chronically high insulin are the things that lead to heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. But yet they excluded all of those people. Now, do you think that might have skewed the data in a different direction if they had been included? Why would you exclude the people who have the most serious glucose and insulin metabolic disease, unless you were trying to skew the data?
Wow, Dr. Berry, how many assumptions can you make there? First of all, you're assuming that these excluded people had metabolic diseases and assuming that these diseases were caused from eating too many carbs. They could have been caused by eating a low-carb diet. But you're wondering, why would the researchers exclude these people? Well, if you read the discussion, you'll see these researchers did not exclude anyone for having a heart attack or stroke. They said they just didn't update the carbohydrate exposures of these participants that had the diseases to reduce potential confounding from changes in their diets that could arise after the diagnosis of these diseases. They were not excluded. They went into great detail how they kept their data, their prior to their disease event dietary data in the study. You just completely misrepresented the study. And speaking of eating high carb and metabolic diseases and death, have you ever heard, Dr. Berry, of the Okinawan diet? Some of the most long-lived people on the planet follow their traditional diet, and roughly 85% of their calories come from carbs. They eat primarily sweet potatoes and rice. And speaking of carbohydrates and heart disease, have you ever seen any diet do this, Dr. Berry? Actually reverse a previously clogged artery. It's not going to happen on your ketogenic diet. This is done on a high-carb, low-fat, no-oil, plant-based diet. And speaking of carbs and diabetes, vegans who eat plants, which are primarily carbs, have lower rates of diabetes than do vegetarians and meat eaters.
And then there's a graph that's just been thrown all over the media. The graph, all of the data on the left side of the graph, the supposed low-carb side of the graph, is made up wishful thinking on the part of people who love plant-based diets.
Oh, really? And you know this how?
First of all, who back in 1987 was eating a meaningfully low carb, healthy fat, or ketogenic diet? No one. Maybe one or two people out of the 15,000 were actually eating a true ketogenic, low carb, healthy fat diet.
Actually, you're wrong there. Dr. Atkins published his best-selling book on low-carb dieting in 1972. So that was like a decade and a half before 1987. Plenty of time for low-carb diets to gain popularity. And secondly, you're missing the overall point. This study here was not about ketogenic diets as you define them. All the study did was compare carbohydrate intakes amongst people and found that those who had the lowest carbohydrate consumption had the highest risk for all-cause mortality. You don't need to get keto involved with this.
This data is all cherry picked. There actually is meaningful research on this kind of thing now. And I'm going to put a link to the Verta study where they're actually studying low carb, healthy fat for diabetics.
Up to this point, I was wondering if Dr. Berry was just confused on some of the aspects of the study, or was he intentionally misrepresenting things? I couldn't tell. But now I'm starting to lean towards the latter because he brought up the Verta study as an example of good, solid science. What he fails to mention is that all of the authors of this study have disclosed a financial relationship with the Verta Health Company and also funding from Atkins Nutritionals and the National Dairy Council. Completely industry-funded study. And also, this Verta health study wasn't even published in a real journal, unlike, the one we're talking about here, which was published in Lancet. No, this Verta study was published on a not well-respected online-only e-journal. Furthermore, the study had a high dropout rate and completely lacked a control group. I mean, are you kidding me? And for comparison, here's another research trial that used a low-fat, plant-based diet, that means high-carb diet, with patients that had type 2 diabetes, duration of 74 weeks, was published in a respected journal, had a control group, and had authors that were not tied financially to any backers of the study, completely non-industry funded study. And guess what? The low-fat, high-carb diet treated diabetes better than the traditional diabetes diet did. The sad truth of the matter is that there's many peer-reviewed studies that show a higher risk of premature death on a long-term low-carb diet like those promoted by Dr. Berry and Virtue Health. I'm going to leave you here with 7. I'll put links to them in the show notes. 7 studies from various locations and institutions around the world, all saying the same thing. So anyway, leave your questions and comments down below. What'd you think of Dr. Berry's very authoritative debunking of the Lancet study? I mean, how many logical fallacies did Dr. Berry commit just on Dr. Willett alone, let alone misrepresenting the data? Couldn't even count how many groups there were in the study. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below of Dr. Berry's handling of his debunking. And hit like if you like this video, and make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell for our channel to get notified for all our new videos, live streams, and activity on our community tab. So until next time, this goes out to you, Dr. Berry. I'll send you one of our books too. Keep it carb, baby. Keep it carb.
Changing your mind again. You've got me spinning circles, spinning round and round, spinning till I'm dizzy.